Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Thank you, Jeff, very much, and very much an honor to be here, and also knowing that this is the Gay Pride in San Francisco, the big event, and so thank you for being here. This is perhaps in the broader scale, all part of it. Can you hear me okay, first of all? Thank you. And a little addendum to that very long bio, like who you're talking about. But actually, I'm no longer, I'm now retired from the Camino Hospital Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction program after 30 years. I just turned 70 in December and felt that's enough after 30 years and letting some youngins, got to let the youngins come up and give space and room. And yeah, just so this is going to be kind of just off the heart cuff, this talk. I've thought about it some though, so just let me know that. But not too much. But just coming up to the age of 70, that's a marker for me. And for those of us here that are 70 and beyond, for further in age, or for that matter, any age, it's quite remarkable that in the Buddhist teaching of the truth of aging, very humbling. Remember, I was asking my meditation teacher, who's a Burmese forest monk, his name was Langdit Seto, and I was probably in my 40s at the time, and I remember it was his 80th birthday, and I asked him one day, so I asked him on the day of his birthday, how long 80 years went by? And he looked at me and he smiled and he answered it like this: 80 years. Like a snap of a finger, 80 years. Of course, we know of a number of people don't make it even close to that age, and yet even after 80 years. What can I say of 70 years? I'm just 10 years younger from when he was 70 years. A lot of water has come down the dam and passed through. Yeah, just it's almost just like yesterday that as a young boy, my parents, they would call me Little Bobby Stahl, and like whatever happened to Little Bobby Stahl? And now, like this, look in the mirror and there's this older guy and no hair. I used to have real wavy hair. I wanted to have straight hair, and now I have no hair. And the times are changing. To everything, there's a season. It's powerful to reflect upon this changing nature of life. And of course, I think many of us know the story of Siddhartha Gautama, who later became the Buddha and was destined to become a great king. And in his 29th year of life, after living this life of pleasure and entertainment and sports and study and just having a good time, if you will, in life, and then going out to the village one day at the age of 29. And the story goes, and probably many of you know this, like he went out 4 different times, and each time he saw some messenger that awakened him to the truth of life. The first was aging, the second was illness, the third was death, the fourth was awakening. He came across a sadhu, somebody that was meditating, and he found out that this person was dedicating their life to understanding the meaning of life. And then Siddhartha realized, this is what I must do. I'm not interested in becoming a king. But these messengers. And actually, it's interesting, in the Dharma, they're called the heavenly messengers. And that's quite an outrageous name for aging, illness, death, and awakening. Maybe awakening can sound a bit heavenly, but aging, illness, and death doesn't sound so heavenly. But I think it's referred to as heavenly in the sense that it wakes us up to the truth of life. Just as it woke Siddhartha up at the age of 29, he had been living in a dream world, and then wakes up and begins to see the truth of his life. It's a powerful moment when we begin to recognize the truth. And I think, aging for me is, I've always known since the age of 4 that I and everyone was going to die. And it was actually a very remarkable moment. I was riding in Brighton, Massachusetts, down Corey Hill Road, heading towards my grandmother's house in Brookline. And there was this moment as I was driving, I was in the back seat of my parents' car. And I don't know why and how it happened, but it's such a powerful realization at the age of 4, when I realized that I and everyone was going to die and could happen at any moment. And I remember asking my mother about this as we were driving down, and father. And I can remember my mother turning around and looking at me and saying, "Don't worry, Bobby, it's not going to happen for a long, 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 long time." And I could tell by the sound of her voice, as my memory recalls it, it was kind. It was wanting to, not make me feel scared. But somehow, when she said, she at least acknowledged that it would happen, but it wouldn't be for a long, 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 long time. But actually, my own realization was that it could happen at any time, because that was the realization. And so I knew that she wasn't fully telling me the truth, but I don't hold it against her. And it's a lot when a kid asks a parent about the truth of death. How do you meet them wisely? Particularly in that times, in the 1950s, which we didn't have as much awareness and understanding about these things, perhaps as nowadays. But even nowadays, it's a difficult question to respond to a child about the truth of death. But I knew what I knew at the age of 4, and sadly to say, by the time I was 9, within the 5 years after that realization, I lost a younger brother who died of an illness, Tay-Sachs disease. We lived in the same room. And my best friend who lived across the street went into a diabetic coma one night and died. And then my grandfather, who lived downstairs, died of a heart attack. This was all between the ages of 4 and 9. And that really set a course in my life of what is this life? And of course, for a number of years after that, very lost, very confused. This was also coinciding with the Vietnam War, the Beatles growing their hair longs, school strikes. I lived outside of Boston. The people were striking against the war. And it was a very difficult time for me personally in my life. Very lost, very confused. This went on for some time. I barely made it through high school. Wasn't really interested in going on further. I was working at a chicken restaurant, and there was a lottery for the war. Fortunately, my draft number was fairly high, and then a few months later, the war ended. But it was a time, as I look back on my life, that I was very lost and very confused. And after graduating high school, a friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want to come with me and do a 5th year of high school, an extra year of high school, and maybe apply to a college," which I hadn't even thought of while I was going to school. And funny enough that my parents probably never, I don't know if they mentioned it either, but then again, I was so lost and confused, I don't recall. And So I decided, yeah, I'll go to take this fifth year, and I was getting into downhill skiing, and at the end of that year I applied to a school in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont because I wanted to, if I got into a college, I wanted to live right near a ski area so I could ski. And fortunately, I got into this very small state college called Linden State College in Lyndonville, Vermont, in Caledonia County, which is actually called the Northeast Kingdom. It was actually really nice to know there's still kingdoms in the world, and Northeastern Vermont is called the Northeast Kingdom, and it's actually gorgeous there. So for the first couple of years, I majored in skiing and getting drunk, getting high, trying to have relationships and so forth. And at the end of 2 years, the school was like reading, writing, arithmetic, science, history, which are all great subjects, but I wasn't interested in any of that. It had been forced down my throat since I can ever remember. And and I got this little letter from my college at the end of 2 years. I opened it up and it said, "Dear Robert Stahl." It wasn't little Bobby Stahl, it was Dear Robert Stahl. When it starts with Robert, I know it's serious. And you had flunked out of college. And it wasn't that much of a surprise because I didn't really care about school. My parents saw this though, and they were very upset, of course. And they begged me, see if you write a letter, maybe you can get readmitted, and maybe there's something that you would interest you. I was just so lost and so confused, and so I decided to write a letter to try to get readmitted, and I was. And my mother said, "Let's take a look at the course catalog. There's got to be something that will interest you." And again, I've been through all this reading, writing, arithmetic, and history, and science, and everything, and wonderful subjects as they all are. Nothing really spoke to me. But she said, "Look on the course catalog. There's got to be something." And so I looked through the catalog, and everything was looking pretty typical. But then I came across one thing, and I kind of paused for a moment, and it said on there, "The wisdom of the East." And then there was a colon. But after that colon, there was a bunch of words that I didn't know what they were, and I didn't even know how to pronounce them. Now I do. Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and Zen. But at the time, I didn't even know how to pronounce those words, never mind know what they were. And but there was something about the East. Ever since I've been a little child, I've always been drawn to the East. It also was helpful that I loved Chinese food. I used to love to go to Chinese restaurants. And there's something about the environment that was very different than, well, the equivalent to Denny's in California is Howard Johnson's in Massachusetts. And it was very different than one of those types of American restaurants. And the food was good, and the environment, there's something about the environment that was it had some sense of serenity or peace. And of course, the art, and very different artwork than what I've ever saw before too. So I feel from a young kid drawn to the East. So I decided to take this class. And never forget the first day. It's kind of like walking into Hogwarts. So at that time, those books weren't even written yet. This was in the early 1970s. But I walked into my class, and my professor was sitting on top of his desk in a full lotus position with blue jeans on, which was really unheard of at the time. And I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" And further, when we walked in, he established eye contact with each and every person there, and truly, genuinely welcomed them to the class. I had never seen a person like this before, been exposed to anything like this. Like right away, I was like, very, very different. And then he got us going in the class, and he said we're going to start by reading the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, which means the way of life. It's the book of the Tao from Chinese wisdom, and I began reading this. It's a very small book. Actually, I got one right in front of me here, and it just consists of 81 poems, or sometimes they're called epigrams, and written in very simple language, but very profound observations, experiences, reflections, contemplations on life. And I had never read anything like this ever before. And I was so blown away, so touched, so like the simplicity and the profoundness of the teachings. And the Tao Te Ching is so much involved in the natural world. I was living in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont and was really into the country and the nature. And I just took to the Tao, and I would just read some of these epigrams over and over and over again, just, because there's so much meaning to them. And sometimes I'd have to read them a lot of times to understand what Lao Tzu was talking about, and the subtleties and the humility and the beauty. So I got really into the Tao Te Ching. Then I came across epigram number 47, which really perplexed me deeply. And to paraphrase it, it goes something like this: if there's no need to look outside your window, for everything you need to know is inside you. And I read that over and over again, and I didn't understand what Lao Tzu was talking about. There's no need to look outside your window, for everything you need to know is inside you. I mean, now when I say it, like, oh, it's quite obvious, you look inside yourself, but at the time, being so lost and confused, and actually being so lost and confused, I didn't even know how lost and confused I was, because that's how lost and confused I was. And so I just read that over and over again. What is he saying here? And then gradually something opened up, and it was like profound to me. Like the first time in my life, I actually realized that if I wanted to know something, I needed to look inside. I'd never thought about that in my entire life up to that moment. That was a very profound moment for me, and really began, in a much more conscious way, begin to get involved in meditation. I started my practice, you could say, at that point, began to look inside. I'm so grateful for that teaching and for Lao Tzu. I've been very fortunate in my life that I was involved very early on with introducing mindfulness-based stress reduction to China, and have been to China a number of times in more recent years teaching meditation retreats. But in the early years, I was part of a small team of people where we introduced mindfulness-based stress reduction, and to help begin teacher training. And it's really incredible to see how much mindfulness in the mainstream world has exponentially grown within China. And it had to be delivered in a very particular way, because there's a real separation between church and state. And we were told, the very first training that we did, there was 250 people there, and we were told that there was going to be 2 government agents there. And if we said something wrong, they would stop the training, and we would be exported and taken to the airport, and that would be the end of it. And so we passed the test. Fortunately, we always kind of wondered, who were those 2 people? We'll never know. But the skillfulness of using language that is compatible as a health incentive within China, which is very much needed, because there's not enough healthcare. And so the idea of actually working with people in groups, teaching them mindfulness practices to help live better with stress, pain, and illness was something that the government was very supportive of. And fortunately, we were very supported by the Chinese government. It's kind of amazing that I was just there last April, and there was a an annual China mindfulness conference, and the Chinese Minister of Health attended it, which is like really quite amazing for how far mindfulness has gone. It was interesting during that first or second MBSR teacher training, one of our hosts asked the teachers, it was just two of us at the time, Florence Milio Meyer and myself, of like what brought us into meditation. And so I ended up telling them my story about Lao Tzu, and prior to that, loving Chinese food. And they got a real chuckle out of that because the Chinese are very proud of their culinary ways, and which, yeah, I agree. And and shared with them about Lao Tzu. And how much has it changed my life? And so there was an invitation that was offered to me that next time I come to China, my hosts were going to take me to the place where Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching outside of Xi'an in the mountains, where he went to be a hermit and left civilization. So it came to pass that happened, that they had taken me. And then my host said, next time I want to take you to Lao Tzu's birthplace. And this actually happened last April when we went to the birthplace of Lao Tzu. So I feel very, Lao Tzu is very much in my mind and heart, and actually on my desk, which you can't see, they offered me these beautiful, almost like museum, like bound volume of the Tao Te Ching. And I got Lao Tzu just looking at me right now. He's just right here. Let's see. And yeah, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but Lao Tzu's looking at me and winking at me, and it's like, okay, I got to go with Lao Tzu here. And yeah, so I just like this sense of this path of turning inwards. I'll just also share that that professor who was sitting cross-legged in the full lotus position, his name was Bill Jackson, and he left that small state college teaching and ended up actually had a wonderful career as a professor of philosophy and religion at Purdue. And somewhere along the line, maybe 12, 15 years ago, I looked him up on Facebook and I actually found him. And I started to write to him, and I don't even know whether at first if he even remembered who I was. As a teacher, you see at this point thousands of students after you work for a while. I used to pride myself that I would never forget a person's name. I did forget their name. I used to pride myself I would never forget a face. Well, I've forgotten faces. So I know for myself, after working with so many people for so many years, these things can happen. So yeah, I'm not sure whether he remembered me or not, but as I shared more, we developed this connection, and I got a chance to thank him. I don't think that he had any idea of how his class in that way turned my life around from someone that was so lost and so confused to devoting one's life to the spiritual path and loving it so much that I, share it with others as well. It came to pass that he had sent me a little note saying that he and his wife were going to be visiting his daughter in San Francisco, who was living there at the time. And I was planning on driving down the coast through Santa Cruz to Monterey, which we live in Santa Cruz. And so he said, how about we meet somewhere? So I was so happy and delighted to do that. And one thing that I didn't share with you, that when I shared that story, when the Chinese asked me about what brought me on the path, and I explained to them about Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, at the end of that training, I was bestowed a gift from the host of a bamboo scroll that was quite long, and each one had the verse of the Tao Te Ching on it, and that was gifted to me as a present. And so, yeah, so many years later, when I finally met my ex-teacher, Bill Jackson, at this restaurant in Santa Cruz, came to visit with me and his wife, and I thought about wanting to offer him a gift, which I felt would be really important because he's He was like the fourth heavenly messenger for me, a teacher of awakening, introducing me onto the path of awakening. And so I was very happy that I knew right away what to give him was the scroll of the Tao Te Ching, because this is what he turned on for me. So it's a very nice closure to that, or beginning and ending. And we've kept in touch since. Yeah, he was like a fourth heavenly messenger. So I love that story about the messengers, like this heavenly messenger, like Siddhartha in the marketplace in the village, that saw in the kingdom, saw this sadhu going by, and he asked his attendant, "Who is this?" And goes, "This is a person that's dedicating their life to understanding the meaning of life." And then Siddhartha knew right there and then, this is what I must do, what I want to do. I want to devote my life to understanding the meaning of life, and who later became the Buddha, the awakened one. But the stories of the heavenly messengers are very powerful. They've always stayed with me through the years. And I have a sense, though you yourselves, maybe some of you haven't thought of it in this way, but my sense is you're meditators. So somewhere along in your life, my sense is that you too have met these messengers. Maybe you have not put it in that type of context, but it's interesting to put in that context. Like, who are your messengers that began to wake you up enough so that you decided to begin to look inwards? The messengers of illness, aging, death. And I know that within the gay community, the male gay community, but also extending else, the AIDS epidemic. I was in San Francisco during the beginning of that. So many people, this truth of aging, truth of illness, truth of death, such a huge impact. Huge. I just want to honor these messengers again for all of us that have been impacted. May not have been from AIDS, it could be something else as well, but the truth of aging, the truth of illness, the truth of death. Truth of this heavenly messengers is that perhaps there is a way, and this way of turning inwards. I just want to invite for a few moments, just for each of us to reflect upon who has been your messengers. It may have been somebody that you know personally, it may have been somebody you didn't know, but just somehow they lived their life, invited you to look inwards, or maybe you listen to a meditation CD that brought you in, like, but there's something, these messengers that brought you onto the path. And I want to invite just to reflect upon this for a few minutes and in some silence, these messengers. These messengers, again, on this sacred day of gay pride and the parade, and just really being able to come out with pride into the world. I have every right to be here just like everyone else. These messengers of awakening. Just for these few moments as well, just as best as you can, letting in some ease within your being. Grateful for all that we have. Perhaps even some moments not only of gratefulness, but also including some contentment. Just as we are, imperfectly perfect as we all are. Grateful and content. Heartfulness opening up. Getting in touch with our own deeper wisdom and understanding. Just abiding with calmness, gratefulness, with contentment, with heart, with wisdom, being present. So part of this is to remember. Remembering our hearts, ourselves, each other, this world, this universe. May there be peace. I'll just offer a reading from Joy Harjo, an Indigenous author, called Remember. And she says, remember the sky you were born under, and know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon and know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth and how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. And you are the evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. And remember your father, he is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth, we are all earth. Remember the plants, the trees, the animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too, and talk to them. Listen to them. For they are live poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember, you are all people, and all people are you. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, language comes from this. Remember, the dance language is that life is. Remember. Remember the earth whose skin you are, red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth, we are earth. Remember, you are all people and all people are you. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. Perhaps that's why Albert Einstein, he speaks about that a human being is part of the whole. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, and this is kind of an optical delusion of our consciousness. This sense of separation, an optical delusion of our consciousness. Just sensing in this body made of the elements of solids and liquids and motion and temperature, and this teaching is found within the first foundation of mindfulness. So the four great primary elements that exist within all matter. So again, the sense of separation, an optical delusion of consciousness, the solids, liquids, motion, and temperature within this body, as well as found in the natural world. The solidness of the bones, hardness of the teeth, found in the natural world of solidity, of rocks and things that are heavy, that have weight. The liquidity within the body of the tears, the blood, the urine, the perspiration, and so forth, so many different liquids. The natural world of the oceans, the lakes, the streams, the creeks, the water within plants. The sense of motion, the body being able to move. Even these words that are talking right now is motion, and wiggling into the anvil and hammer of your ears connected to the auditory nerves, giving the sounds. Movement within the body, the ambulation, the heart beating, the intestines, moving the solids, the liquids, and so forth. It's movement factory of the body, just like in the world. The winds, the movement, the planes, the buses driving by, ambulation, movement of all sorts. Just like within the body, there's the warmth and the coldness as you breathe in through the nose. Feel the temperature of the breath as you breathe in. It's a little cooler. As you breathe out, it's a little bit warmer. The caloric element, temperature, internally, and also externally within the natural world, a sense of warmth and coolness. Of course, all of these elements broken down into atoms, protons, neutrons, electrons, a lot of space. Anne Alexander Bingham, she writes, to know that the atoms of my body will remain after death. To think of them rising through the roots of a great oak, to live in leaves and branches and twigs. Perhaps some of these atoms might feed a crimson peony or a blue iris or a broccoli. Or perhaps some of these atoms will rest on the water that freezes and thaws with the seasons. And some of these atoms might become a bit of a fluff on the wing of a chickadee. To feel the breeze and to know the support of air. And some of these atoms might drift up and up, up and up and up into space. Stardust returning from whence it came. It is enough to know that as long as there is a universe, I am a part of it. It is enough to know that so long as there is a universe, I am a part of it. feeling that sense of connection and interconnection with ourselves, with each other, with this world, with this universe. Just taking some rest in the grace of this universe. We are this universe. This universe is us. And so may all beings find the gateways into their hearts to grow with greater wisdom and compassion. May all beings dwell with peace.
Thank you, Bob. That really made me appreciate heavenly messengers and the little Bobby in each of us.
Thank you so much, and honored to be here, and happy Pride Parade and day, month, year. And it's an honor to be here. I know it's a little bit early, but happy to, I know there's some time for some discussion, announcements, and if there's any comments or questions, happy to.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes for questions or comments. Anybody in the room or on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, raise your hand. I see Tom has. Let's see Tom here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, hey, Bob. Thank you so much. That was really a great opportunity to think about how, what ushered me onto the path as well. I liked the way you presented that with, actual examples from your own life. I know for me, it wasn't necessarily old age, sickness, and death. I like to relate there's, a couple of benefactors that brought me to the Dharma, or the path, including Mao Zedong and Pope Benedict, ironically, because, Mao Zedong drove the Buddhists out of Tibet into the West, and Pope Benedict drove me out of the Catholic Church, into the open arms of the Buddhists who were, here in the West. And so I see how it kind of connects, and it's not, sometimes it's not a sign saying, come here, come here. It's more like a sheepdog barking to, like, go away, go the other direction, And yeah, it's interesting when we reflect on our lives how that happens. So thanks for that opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you just shared. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful, I think, for, yeah, I love doing this recollection. Who's been our messengers? Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone in the room? Bob Lair. Speak loudly, please.
Bob, I appreciate the wisdom of your words. They made me think about the story of my own life, and I feel much of my life has been allowing myself to be open to the outside and available to opportunities that happen, which eventually led to my having a great career that I appreciate. But even as I say that, looking inside and allowing yourself to feel connected to the outside, maybe there's not a difference in that. I wonder if you could resolve that seeming contradiction, which I'm now believing isn't there.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that I think that as time goes on, it gets very blurry. The inside, outside. I mean, how can you know the outside unless there's an inside? How can you know the inside unless there's an outside? So they go hand in hand. How can you know the unconditioned unless you see through all the conditioning from the Dharmic point of view? So I think the interrelationship with that is very poignant and I mean, it's very sweet. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. And the beautiful thing, I just want to put it out there, it'd be great someday, like every single one of you here has a story of what brought you to this path. And so there's like many Dharma talks here waiting to happen. And every single one of us, there was markers along the way that for whatever reason, it turned us to look inside. So I just want to put that out there. It'd be great to hear from somebody from like every one of you has a talk brought you here. And it's beautiful.